And who brought you Van Halen Rising comes Ted Templeman, a platinum producer's life and music, written by Templeman as told to Greg Renoff. Available for only $19.95 at Amazon.com. Order it today.
This is Paul Brannigan, author of Unchained, the Eddie Van Halen story, and you're listening to the Dave and Dave Unchained podcast.
Pick up the new coffee table-sized book, The Decade That Rocked, by legendary rock photographer Mark Weissguy Weiss. This 376-page book has hundreds and hundreds of full-color photos that Weiss shot through the 80s for magazines like Circus, Faces, and Hit Parader, featuring bands like Van Halen, Motley Crue, Twisted Sister, Bon Jovi, Skid Row, Guns N' Roses, Ozzy Osbourne, and more. There's even behind-the-scenes stories to go with these colorful, eye-popping pictures. The Decade That Rocked, a new book by rock photographer Mark Weiss, is available for purchase now. Go to thedecadethatrocked.com, where there are exclusive bundles available with extra prints, t-shirts, and even patches. Inquire about the Van Halen bundle, especially made for Dave and Dave Unchained listeners. Order today. The Decade That Rocked. It'll rock your world. Hello, loyal listeners. Wanted to let you know about our new Patreon. If you like what we do and you have the means, drop us a donation to keep the podcast going. Go to patreon.com/DD Unchained. That's patreon.com/DDUNCHAINED. Doesn't have to be huge. Any side's contributions are greatly appreciated. Those who contribute $40 or more will get the Unchained package. Trust me, it's worth it. Contribute $65 or more and get the Romeo Delight package, which is Unchained plus more. And $95 scores you the Top Jimmy package, which is the kitchen sink. If you're a Van Halen hardcore and listen to this cast, this is stuff you'll appreciate. It's ear candy. Go to patreon.com/DD Unchained. Email your contact information to ddunchainedpodcast@gmail.com. What is understood need not be discussed.
We didn't have any PA equipment. When Red Ball Jet was out of work, when they didn't have a gig, I would approach Rock and ask him, we'd like to rent your PA. And he would rent it to us, give him $10. And this went on for a few months. And eventually I just said to Ed, look, you're not really capable of being the front man and singer. I said, Ed, rather than paying Rock us $10 every time he rent his stuff, why not just get him in the band and we won't have to pay him $10, and we'll have a lead singer. Because he, at that time, he walked around with a certain confidence that was good, I felt.
All right, Dave, you know what time it is.
Well, my buddy Dave, he don't want me around. He says he's tired of watching me let him down. He just wants a good mailbag. He wants only the best. But he hates disappointment better than all the rest. And he says that he thinks that I'm headed for a whole lot of trouble. Well, he thinks that I'm headed for a whole lot of trouble. Well, he thinks that I'm headed for a whole lot of trouble if I don't nail the mailbag intro.
That's right, it's mailbag time again. And we got a few letters here, Dave, not a huge bunch. So we're going to start you off easy in the new year here. We're going to start off with letter number 1 coming from Tom J. from Gilbert, Arizona. He says, forgive me if this has already been addressed on the podcast, but which Dave is referenced first in the podcast name? Is it peppy, happy, cheerful Dave or tired, bitter, sluggish Dave? Love the podcast, Tom J., Gilbert, Arizona. Well, to answer your question, we actually switch from month to month. But I have to say that Quiet Dave is not tired, bitter, or sluggish. I wouldn't use any of those adjectives to describe him. How dare you, sir?
I thought he was talking about you. I'm just kidding.
That's awesome. Well, I guess just for that, we're going to let Dave be the first Dave in the Dave and Dave Unchained moniker. So we'll do that right off the bat.
Wow, that's pretty harsh. I didn't think I was that bitter of a guy.
I wouldn't describe you as tired, bittered, or sluggish. Those are not terms that I would describe you by, but I tell you.
I would, but not all on the same day.
Okay. Well, we're on to letter number 2, and that comes from your buddy, Dave. You know who this is? Top Jimmy James!
Oh, I love Top Jimmy. He's the king.
That's right. So he says here, come on, Daves, give us a break. You guys are torturing your fans with those Rolling Stone Top 100 lists. There isn't a Van Halen fan alive that gives two flying fucks about the opinion of Rolling Stone. Just consider the legendary bands that those douchebags have given bad album reviews to. Groups like Van Halen, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, Rush, yes, just to name a few. I can remember years ago when Rolling Stone came out with a top 100 guitarist list, they placed Eddie at an insultingly low number. I visited my local bookshelves and gathered up every copy of that issue and hid them all behind the largest books in the store to ensure that they didn't get a single issue sold. Traditionally, in their mind, if musicians aren't writing songs about some perceived social malady or political movement, then they aren't to be taken seriously. Although I hear they are now including pretty pop princesses and zero-talent rappers on those lists. What a joke. They almost always dismiss any band that has the slightest hint of machismo or writes about sex, drugs, and rock and roll lifestyle or has elements of fantasy as a lyrical theme. They also dismiss any high-level musicianship as meaningless and unimportant. That's why they hold such shit bands like The Clash in such high regard. The Clash suck as musicians, and they write about politics. I think we would all be better off ignoring those too cool for the room, man bun-wearing mama's boys. Alex didn't need no stinking click, and Van Halen fans don't need no stinking Rolling Stone. P.S. The preceding suggestion was, of course, written with a wink and a smile, and I am not trying to tell you guys how to run your podcast. Just having some fun, although I seriously hate the fuck out of Rolling Stone. Love you guys. Top Jimmy James! So, anyway, this guy's a riot. What a character. I love Top Jimmy James. I love hearing from him. So I want to tell you the reason why we do that is because I think it's important to let people know of how they're reflecting or lack of reflecting Van Halen. We don't do it because we want to pump up Rolling Stone, but I have to agree that they do have sort of a cool list, and Van Halen's never been in their favor. We report on it because it's, news and things that relate to Van Halen, but it doesn't mean that we agree, but we do feel the need to stand up for the band. Like, for example, if they're not on there, why aren't they on there? I don't think the Clash suck, but they definitely are overpraised. What do you think, Dave?
The Rolling Stone list is the one that people love to hate. I mean, the reason they put the list out is because it elicits a response. And quite frankly, it's always a great topic of conversation when we talk about it.
That's true.
These lists are just basically opinions, and opinions are like a-holes. Everybody has one, and nobody really wants to hear somebody else's. That's just the way it is. So what can I tell you?
What can I tell you? We love to bitch because we're tired, bitter, and sluggish.
But not on the same day.
Not on the same day.
No, not all on the same day.
That's right. Letter number 3 comes from John McDonnell, and he says, you guys are totally right calling out Dave's comments on the origin of the Stripes. I cannot profess to know Alex Van Halen, but I suspect he remains in a state of heavy grief over the death of his brother and lifelong musical companion. I simply do not accept that he has been laughing like a pirate about anything over the past 12 or so months, and if he did, it wouldn't be with Dave, particularly not over how Ed somehow stole Dave's design for Frankenstrap. While I do not dismiss the Van Hagar era, I am very much a Roth man when it comes to my Van Halen. Even from that perspective, it is my view that it is not only unnecessary, but indecent for Dave to be referencing the overly repeated laughing like pirates line when peddling such unwelcome and needless conjecture on the origin of Eddie's most iconic guitar, particularly when, as you rightfully said, it has been debunked by a whole credible source. I do not understand why Dave, whose legacy, talent, and uncommon intelligence usually elevate him above the Hagar Simmons-esque crapmire, would engage in such attention-seeking when there is not only no need, but where there is the likelihood of offending some good people. John McDonnell. Well, let me tell you something, John. I agree. I totally agree. Dave and I obviously made it clear that DLR and the Stripes situation is totally insane. I'm sorry, Roth. I love you, but come on. It's as synonymous as the S on Superman's chest with Ed, the Stripes. Plus, after Ed's death, it sounds really poor and bitter to be talking like that. It's sort of like a nasty fuck you. Alex, I'm not so sure the two are even in touch. I wonder if Dave is having those conversations in his own head. I have no idea what's going on. This might be all occurring in his own mind. Who knows? Maybe they are besties. I have no fucking idea. It just seems a little strange. Dave's behavior lately, to be honest with you, has been sort of questionable. I have no idea what he's smoking, but I think he needs to change brands. What do you think, Dave?
I think you're right. I think he does need to change brands. Yeah. Like we said previously, it just seems very petty to be bringing up the whole guitar thing now. Dave, to this day, still never ceases to surprise me.
That's the truth. Letter number 4 comes from Dan Ninen. Man, I was checking multiple times a day and was wondering why it took so long, but it was great to have the new podcast, and Paul Brannigan was awesome, and yes, I can understand him fine, although I'm glad he's not reading in the audiobook, LOL. Too bad they couldn't get Stephen Hawking to read it. So you may have heard David Lee Roth is now claiming he played guitar, including Eruption, on all of the albums, and that he wrote all of the guitar parts. I had a feeling that was the case. Good thing he was able to show Ed how to play all that stuff. Man, what a talent. Thanks for reading my letter about Sammy Hagar's brilliant lyric. When was the last time you did something for the first time? As Charlie Chan used to say, there are two possibilities, both of them suspect. Either one, he didn't hear a different kind of truth, which, if true, doesn't say much for Sammy. And 2, did he hear it? Which means he stole the lyric. Dan Ninen. Well, Dan, I don't think Sam would steal from Dave. He's not stupid. It does seem like sort of a ridiculous coincidence. It's just funny that he's boasting so much about it. That's what I think is so strange. But I also think, sometimes when this occurs, and this has gone on with comedians too, they get an idea for something and they get all riled up about it and they forget where they absorbed it from. Sometimes that happens. A lot of comedians talk about that. Like a comedian will see another comedian do a bit on something, and then all of a sudden that subject matter gets absorbed in the back of their head, and then somehow later down the line, that comedian decides to write a bit on that same subject he saw another comedian talk about, and then it becomes like a thing. They've had spats over this kind of stuff. So I've never seen Sam talk so lovingly about one of his own lyrics, especially the album hasn't even come out yet. This is apparently on his new album. Like I said, Dave didn't write that line. Like, that's not Dave's line. He didn't, fabricate that line. That line has existed in the world way before that, but he used it on the last Van Halen album, so it's a little strange that Sam would use it. That's all. It's just sort of a weird, strange coincidence, but I have a feeling that Sammy heard it somewhere and he used it, and I don't think he remembers where he heard it. It's like something like that. So what do you think, Dave?
I'm waiting for the day when somebody calls him out on like a radio show or an interview or something like that. I mean, at this point, I've got to believe somebody has told him, right? You would think somebody has told him by this time.
I know.
Sam, I hate to tell you, but Dave beat you to the punch.
I know. It's so crazy. I know. I agree with you. Letter number 5 comes from Eric Torbeck, who calls himself the perfect letter writer from New Jersey. So, Happy New Year to my favorite podcasters. I just want to go into the Wayback Machine and get your thoughts on a very odd loss of control video. First of all, it's certainly not the Women and Children First song I would have promoted with a video. And secondly, it also makes no damn sense to me and never did. but I don't think I've ever heard the band comment on it, so I was curious if you knew any of the backstory behind it. Are they surgeons? Are they mad scientists? What the hell is going on? I guess technically it was never officially released, which was probably a good move. Rock on, Eric Torbick, the perfect letter writer from New Jersey. Well, Eric, Happy New Year to you, my friend. We're always happy to hear from you, and you continue to be the perfect letter writer, perfect bite-sized, straight to the point, and always good-humored. So, just to start off, I want to say I am not